Okay, I'm sure just like so many other churches today, everybody, I came to town, turned on to Facebook to see what was going on in Silsbee because I've been away for a little while, only to find that it was flooded with the picture of the Last Supper, and then the interpretation of that picture with the 2000 Olympics. Now, I would love to talk about that today, but I'm not. I'm going to give it a little time for everything to soak in, but I will tell you this, no surprise. No surprise whatsoever. I saw where the church went out to the streets of Paris to find out what the reaction was to the people in the streets. And no surprise again there, they all defended the actions. And I got to thinking, wow, you know what? This was only the people from all over the world thinking that what they just did was okay. And then Tim and I was talking about something totally different today. I just don't want to be in their shoes when it comes Judgment Day. Not that I'm perfect, all right, but to boldly stand in front of the whole world and do something like that, man, Satan is getting pretty arrogant. Satan is getting pretty bold. But what will never change about Satan is his stupidity. Because somehow he thinks that he's won and that he's going to win. And then, like again, Tim and I, we both came to the same conclusion. At the end, we win. All right, enough of that. Just don't be afraid. And granted, there was a lot of Americans that were interviewed and was asked the same question, and all of them said it was okay. That I heard. Now, in the next few days, the next week, when we get behind this pulpit, I'm sure there's going to be some more changes and some more drama that we can talk about. But just remember, we win and we're okay. All right, today we're going to revisit a message that I did a couple of weeks ago, and it was called It's Borrowed, but we're going to call it It's Borrowed Part 2. And we're going to read the same scriptures that we did a couple of weeks ago, and you'll find that in Luke, the 5th chapter, and we're going to read verse 2 and 3 again. And he saw 2 boats by the lake, but the fishermen had gone out of them and were washing their nets. Getting into one of the boats, referring to Jesus, which was Simon's, he asked him to take him out a little from the land. And he sat down and he taught the people from the boat. Now, I don't know if you realize this, but Jesus may have done something illegal here. And I want to say this because if you tried this in today's world, you might be hauled to jail. So just imagine our lot outside being full. And you go out there and you pick the finest car or the finest truck, whichever one you prefer. You get in there and you do exactly what Jesus did. And then you wait for that owner of that vehicle to come, and he sees you sitting in his truck or the car. What will happen? Well, you know what? I just saw the Agape House bumper sticker, so I just assumed you were a Christian and it would be okay for me to just get in your vehicle and use it. Now, I know that's a little funny and it's kind of out there, but that's basically what Jesus did. He got in a perfect stranger's boat that wasn't his, that didn't belong to him. He didn't sign a lease. He didn't rent a car or anything like that. He just sat in Peter's boat. And you may ask, why did he pick Peter's boat? Because if you look at Peter, just on the surface, you'll find that Peter was impulsive. He was a know-it-all. He was violent at some times. I mean, come on, he cut off an ear. With any kind of raising, have you ever cut off someone's ear? You just don't do that. But Peter did. That's just something that a normal person wouldn't have done, but Peter did. And Peter also had a filthy mouth. I even heard one preacher say one time that Jesus picked Peter because of his boldness. I don't think so. I really don't. Because if you remember, the Bible was written pre-social media. So they didn't have Facebook, and they didn't have YouTube, and they didn't have Instagram or anything like that. But Jesus had one purpose. He had to, in the next 3 years, start his ministry. And he had to get the 12 disciples on board. He had to get his followers. So I think that Jesus used Peter not because of his boldness, certainly not because of his attitude and mouth. I think Jesus picked Peter just for his boat. Just his boat. How else were you going to spread the gospel? And what was his first act with Peter's boat? He asked Peter to take him out just a little bit, and then he started preaching God's Word. Now, we so often look at what we have, and for the most part, I think everybody in here has their own vehicle, their house, whether they rent or own it. They have a job. They have duties, they have obligations, and everything like that. So I have to ask you this. If you had a boat, would you have let Jesus use it? You didn't know Jesus very well. You've heard rumors. And certainly if you were a man like Peter, would you have let him use your boat? I would venture to say probably not. But, Peter was kind of mysterious. So he wanted to see what this man Jesus was all about. So here is the Creator partnering with His creation. Here's the Word of God who has the ability to walk on water, that didn't absolutely need Peter's boat whatsoever. But because Jesus saw something in Peter, He sat in His boat. But if you also remember, He saw two boats. And we talked about this a couple of weeks ago. What if Jesus would have asked Peter, Peter, can I use your boat? And Peter would have said no. Jesus had a backup. He had boat number 2. I don't know who it belongs to. Maybe some of you scholars that you researched this, but I have yet to research and find out who was the other owner of the boat. But if Jesus would have asked Peter, and Peter would have said no, man, where would we be in the New Testament? What would Peter have been in history? We overlook the story and the significance of it because we know how it ends. We know that Peter said yes. We know that Peter pushed Jesus out there and Jesus was able to teach the people. And then later on, the big catch. And it was very successful. But I had always thought that when God asked Peter that God needed something from Peter. And then the Lord reminded me, you know what? I didn't need Peter. I didn't need Peter's boat. I had the ability, if I wanted to, if I really wanted to teach those people, I could have just walked on water. I could have just bypassed the boat. On the shore, I would have started walking, and I would have walked maybe 100, 150 feet out there and started teaching. But God didn't choose to do it that way. He chose to use Peter. Not for what Peter could do for him, but what God could do for Peter. Because later on in the story, you find out that God blessed Peter and his fishing company beyond compare. So I was thinking Jesus needed Peter's boat to realize that Jesus didn't need Peter's boat at all. Instead, Peter needed Jesus to bless his boat. Now think about that. Peter comes in contact with Jesus, and Jesus wants to use his boat. And Peter pushes him out there, and Jesus starts teaching, and you know the story. And then later on again, the big catch. But what Peter didn't realize is that he wasn't doing Jesus a favor at this point. Jesus was doing him a great blessing. Because Peter's life has changed from this point on. Now, you may think that that was a miracle of all the fish that he caught and everything like that. And I don't know about you, but I've been fishing. And I've even been fishing with Uncle Chuck, which has a depth finder that can find fish and everything like that. But they didn't have this back then. All right? And these are skilled fishermen, commercial fishermen. This was their living. They knew where all the fish was. They didn't have some kind of radar or finder for fish. They just knew where the fish were. But they had came back empty. And God decided, you know what? Well, let me borrow your boat just for a minute. Let me go do what my Father has called me to do. And then afterwards, I'm going to bless you. I don't know about you, but if Peter would have known that Jesus was going to bless his boat and catch all those fish, of course he would have said yes. But Peter didn't know that at this point. He just knew that some man named Jesus wanted to borrow his boat, go out there, and start preaching and teaching. Peter cussed. He was violent. He was rude. He was a know-it-all. He was all of those things that I told you before. So what makes you think that Jesus would want to use someone like that? Why wouldn't he want to use Sister Smith that sits underneath the oak tree, crochets or knits or sews or anything like that? Why would Jesus start his ministry off by using someone like Peter? Again, I mean, I don't know about you, but I think he would have got more publicity if he would have just walked on water at that point and started teaching. We know he can do it. Channel 6 may even came out there and did a little expose about this man walks on water. He bypasses the boat. And then later on, the same boat that he used to preach and teach, he now catches these thousands and thousands of fish. I know it seems kind of silly, but you've got to understand, at that particular time, Peter did not have any faith in God. God hasn't done anything to him. Matter of fact, you just spent the last 12 hours out there catching nothing. But you know what? Isn't that kind of like we are? We'll go all day to our jobs, to our families, and accomplish nothing with them. And then when we come home, we expect everything to be rosy. And everything's supposed to be great. The wife's supposed to cook. The children's supposed to behave. They're supposed to do their homework. They're supposed to take a shower. They're supposed to go to bed. And we'll start all this all over again. But I don't think we realize that we're not here for ourselves and our pleasures and everything to go okay. God came, and like Sis was talking about, He died for us. He sacrificed for us. And somehow we want to trivialize it sometimes and think that, you know what, I'm undeserving. And then Tim and I was talking, and mostly Tim was talking, and was talking about how everything came upon Jesus at one time. I mean, I don't think we realize what that really means. I mean, can you imagine being so happy, so full of joy, having light, and then all of a sudden, the coldest you've ever been has come. The darkest you have ever been in has come. The loneliness that you've never felt before has come upon you. And this is not just a passive. You became that. You were that for quite a long time. Sure, he arose and everything like that. But he felt all this. He lived it. He was it. I'm kind of ashamed sometimes that I look at the circumstance of Jesus being on the cross and just thinking that, you know, the sky turned black and he was in a lot of pain and he suffered and people laughed and spat on him and everything like that. And it's, so what? It's like, okay, we know that. We've been taught that. Maybe we've been taught it so long and people has talked about it for so long that we've actually become numb to the fact that Jesus... And then every once in a while, someone like Sis or someone famous on TV will sing a song and bring us back to that day, and we'll remember it, and for just a brief 2.5 minutes or 3 minutes, we realize exactly what he's done. And in 24 hours, we forget. Now, I'm sure Jesus didn't die on the cross so we could remember it all the time and visit it all the time and stir up those sad emotions and everything like that. But he wanted us to realize exactly what he sacrificed and how he sacrificed, so that we wouldn't be sad, but we would be happy that we were delivered from stuff like that. Yes, we still experience death. We experience loved ones that die. We experience hardship and tribulations and stuff like that. But could you imagine if we didn't have a Savior that loved us as much as he did, what it would be today? Could you imagine if God didn't need Peter? But he chose Peter, just like he's chosen all of us. I love in verse 3 when Jesus asks, Peter. Jesus asked Peter. I mean, that's pretty special. I mean, how many times have Jesus asked you for something? Think about it. It's a lot more often than what you think. Jesus actually asked you for something. But he was asking Peter, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to lend me your boat? Because this is going to be the start of a new life for you. Yes, bro, I like your boat. I want to use it. But I don't need it. And I don't need you. Because my calling is much higher than you. Well, Brother Robert, wasn't his calling Peter? Peter has an option. Am I going to allow Jesus to use my boat? You have the same. Are you going to allow Jesus to use your boat? Are you going to allow him to use your talent that he's given you by fact? Whether it's in work, in deed, whether it's asking those hard questions. I don't know. It's easy for us to stand behind here and say, yes, Lord, use me. Whatever I have, you gave it to me. I realize it. Use it. And then he uses it, and all we do is complain. And all we do is gripe. And it's not done the way I thought God was going to allow me to use this talent. I'm supposed to have the mic. I'm supposed to have the spotlight. I'm supposed to have this. I'm supposed to have all that. But what we got to realize is God doesn't need us. God has chosen us, but God doesn't need us. Because whether or not, this is a hard pill for me to swallow, whether or not I make it to heaven or hell, but preferably make it to heaven, heaven will survive whether I'm there or not. Now that's kind of hard and that's kind of cold, but just realize there is a heaven and there will be an eternity. And whether I'm there for eternal in heaven or whether I'm there eternally in hell, it doesn't change the fact. God has chosen me. You never know what God will do because someone gave him their boat. Now you may think that you're from Silsbee or you're from Caney Head or you're from Kirbyville or you're from Buna or whatever, that God can't possibly use you. I don't know. Look at Tim. I didn't know Tim over 2 years ago. I'm assuming let's just say Tim's 50. For 50 years of his life, we had no clue that there was a Tim out there. And we certainly didn't think that Tim would be a part of us. I mean, what does Tim have to offer to this church? What does Jeanette have to offer to this church? What does the Dempseys have to offer to this church? They have everything. God just wants to use you like he used Peter's boat. He chose Peter's boat, but we got to realize if I say no, he's got a second boat. There's going to be a boat used. Whether or not it's you or someone else is your decision. And that's exactly why Jesus asked Peter to use his boat. There wasn't a 10-year plan. All Peter had to do was obey and give Jesus a push. Peter had no idea for the next 3 years that he would be part of such a great partnership. where he saw the blind see, where he saw the dead rise, where he saw the miracles. And just think, he could have missed it all. He really could have. He could have missed it all. Because let me tell you, the people that we're talking about that blasphemed and that participated in the blaspheming of the Lord's Supper, they had a choice. Am I going to get on this boat? Or am I going to stand my ground? And they chose to get on the boat. They had a choice, just like Peter did. Am I going to let Jesus use my boat? Yes. And I would love to believe that all of us will. But there's people out there, a lot of people, that said, no, you can't use my boat. And those people are just like me and you. They had a mother, they had a father, they had a childhood. They had a choice. I choose good over evil. But so many chose evil over good. Whether they're deceived or not, look at us. We're deceived every day. We just choose to stay with the Lord. Now, I don't want to be a downer or anything like that. So I'm going to end with this. As you stand and get ready to be dismissed. Oh man, it's really early. Maybe I need to preach a little longer. No, y'all go ahead and stand. I just want you to realize, as a boat owner, and all of us are a boat owner, at least for this message. Are you going to let someone like God use your boat?